Welcome back to the SV Esports Pod, your place for all things esports. Today we are joined by a very special guest, a very good gamer, someone who's had a lot of experience in the collegiate esports space, and a very dear friend of mine. This is Venomer, also known as Vishesh Kumar from UW Madison Smite. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today, Venomer.
Thanks for having me, honestly. It's really fun to be here.
Well, we really appreciate you coming out to the pod today. So first, we just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what the collegiate esports scene is like. Like, how does what goes into planning games? Is there a whole lot of league format?
Yeah, so I mean, the first step is probably that there's a lot of different collegiate leagues, actually, right? You've
Mm-hmm.
got different companies that have their different means of making money from it. And so not everyone signs up for all the same leagues, but for the most part, a lot of the competition talks to each other, and then we're like, "Yo, you guys signing up in this one? Yeah, we're signing up in this one." And then, everyone decides on what is probably going to be the major tournament, usually by prize pool.
Okay.
The biggest prize pool we've ever had in collegiate, probably we had like a year where it was going $4,000 for first place
I mean, that's
each
good
semester,
money
but
for a
yeah, they
pretty
didn't they didn't
underfunded
let
sport.
that leave. Yeah, they didn't leave that one going for long. Too many. They were definitely net negative for pretty fast, but it was fun.
Because I know
But yeah,
we've competed together within the
right,
Play VS circuit for high school stuff.
exactly.
But what did the skill gap compare when you switched over to collegiate from high school?
Okay, if we're gonna go through the rank system, I don't know if it's
Well,
ideal, but
not like rank system,
you
but
know,
like how did you
but like
feel?
percentage.
Like
Okay,
how big was the skill gap when you shifted over? Was there like a
we'll say
noticeable
it like this.
difference?
We'll say it like this. In Play VS, I thought I was the best player in the league, right? Like in the whole system, everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Easily. But in collegiate, I thought I was pretty bad. Like I had to learn. When I first joined, I was like, "Oh shoot, there's a learning curve. Like we're playing a game, and we got to learn a little bit." It wasn't for Play VS. There was no training needed. We were already the best team. The When we joined the other league, it was like wake up. Most of the players here are masters. Most of the players here probably also want to go pro.
That's
Um, so they're decent. They're
that's
decent.
it. So like the competition got real as soon as you kind of
Yeah, yeah. It
stepped
was
out,
like
right?
top 1%. For the most part, it was top 1%
Mhm.
players.
So with the kind of evolving changes, right? And you're coming in and you've got this whole new roster of guys that you have to play with. What were some of like the difficulties that you had when you started playing collegiate?
Hmm. So honestly, I started playing collegiate when COVID happened.
Hmm.
So it actually was a booming moment for the club because COVID was actually good for all the esports for the most part. So our club actually just like 10x'd in size and like there were a lot more teams. A lot of people were doing in-houses every day. We were playing a lot. So it was actually a lot of fun. Um, I will say you're talking about the roster switching. One thing that's annoying about collegiate esports for sure is, you know, different years, different people on the team are going to graduate,
Hmm.
and you always have to keep reforming that roster. And five people is not a lot of people to have
Oh
on a
yeah.
team.
I think
So
part of it
like
too, right,
deciding,
was like we came in high school with a roster of established players that we kind of
yeah,
knew what we had and how much time we had. Whereas collegiate, right, you
mhm,
do have this kind of rotating roster of players that you have to manage, and this person's leaving, so we need to find a replacement for this role. Was there a lot
exactly,
of
yeah, yeah,
difficulty with that within the process of trying
oh yeah,
to?
oh yeah. 'Cause here's the thing too. It's like UW only had enough to field a maximum of two teams in its peak, right?
Mm,
So everyone wanted to be on the main team, but there's only five slots. There's a sub slot, but like you don't nobody wants to be a sub because that's not as fun.
of course, of course.
And like it's a little tough because it's like you have to be objective. You can't pick someone because they're nicer than someone else, but you have to actually pick them because they're good. You know what I mean?
Was there ever
Um,
a situation with that where maybe the person that was better was worse for the team at all? Was there ever any kind of
oh, for
situations where you've had
sure.
that
Oh, for sure,
where
for
you
sure.
ended up having to pick the lower skill player because the lower skill player was better for team merging, like team bonding kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, look, our first captain, when I first joined, the first person who was running the team was a console player, which sounds, might not sound crazy, but in a game where everyone's using mouse and keyboard, being a console player is crazy. And so, like, mechanically, he wasn't as good as the best mid laners, but like in the team comms, he was like he's what I'd call an IGL, where it's like someone who's in game leading. They're calling all the shots. When stuff goes wrong, they're keeping everyone straight. When stuff goes right, we correctly punish, like whatever, get the maximum reward from whatever we got, right? There's like a really important team player without actually necessarily being like insane at the game itself, you know? But they're making
Absolutely.
sure they were a core part of us being good, for sure.
Absolutely. Sadly, I believe that is all the time we have
So we
for
got
our part, but I do really appreciate you coming out and joining the pod for at least a little bit and giving us a little bit of your experiences.
Thanks for letting me come out and yap. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
of course, brother. All right, that's all the time we have. Thank you for listening to the SV Sports Esports Pod, and we'll be back next week with more content. Welcome back to the JRN 564 Sports halftime report of the Celtics and the Knicks here in the TD Garden in Boston. And this game has kind of gotten out of hand. The Celtics are leading right now by over 20 points. It is 74 to 55, which is a bigger gap than we were planning to anticipate, most certainly. I think with the idea of this matchup, there was not expected to be this kind of level of domination by the Celtics this early. The threes have been raining. It, it doesn't seem like any of this kind of scoring onslaught is going to stop no matter what the Knicks do on defense. We'll have to kind of watch as the game progresses and goes on, but right now it's looking like it's coming up all green, and the three ball is just going a little too easy for the Celtics. So this has been the JRN 564 halftime report. We are going to be coming back at the end of the game with the results. Welcome back to the Red Sox post-game report for the game in Toronto versus the Toronto Blue Jays that ended in the score of 1-6. Sadly, not the outcome the Sox were looking for here, but they held strong for a good while. They got 5 innings out of Richard Fitz, the new rookie starter that has kind of come up and been pretty good for them thus far this year, but he gave up 2 runs in the fourth and 2 runs in the fifth, and that kind of ended his day there. Um, but while the Red Sox were scoreless up until the fifth, they were able to get a run in the sixth, but then it quickly snowballed out of hand when the Blue Jays got two in the seventh off of Josh Winkowski. And from that point forward, the game was pretty much done. The big thing that you could have really seen here was missed opportunities. The Red Sox were getting guys on base. I mean, they had 7 hits this game, and there were tons of opportunities with runners in scoring position that they just kind of floundered. They were opportunities they had to score, and it just never really ended up working out. I mean, the numbers right here, it's team left on base. They had 8 players that were stuck on base and just couldn't get off the base paths, no matter what they did. The big thing here too is the Gosman just having a great outing. I mean, 1 run in 6 innings. You were really hoping you could get to him, but they just were unable to kind of find the pitches they wanted. Some of that was just leaving pitches, and then he would not throw the same pitch again. Like there was a couple times where I believe it was Willie Abreu just watched a middle fastball come right down the gut, and you gotta take hold of that. You can't just leave that there. And then once he threw the one middle fastball, he would just throw all breaking balls off the plate and just get him swinging and missing. And Gosman really had control of this game. I mean, another great outing for the young player for the Blue Jays, Jonathan Clase. He went three for three with two RBIs and a homer. Um, Good day for the young kid, but in terms of the Sox, there was not a whole lot of stat lines that you could, quite frankly, really be excited about. I mean, Trevor Story going 0 for 2 with two walks is nice. We'll take him getting on base given how hard that's been for him recently. But we just needed somebody to step up when it mattered most, and it never really came around for the Sox. Looking forward, the next game in their series, uh, I think the Red Sox Toronto series is over. Yes, it is. The Red Sox Toronto series is over. We won the series 2-1. But the real question is, where do the Red Sox go from here? I think, in honesty, the playoff push is kind of done. I think you should kind of start to look at resting guys up because you have this series going into Tampa Bay that's coming up, but that's it. Once this series is over, the season's done. You're already out of the playoff push. Might as well just start resting young guys that are playing. And we saw a bit of this with them putting Devers on the IL for the rest of the year, and I think we saw that with Kenley Jansen as well. So they've got players kind of resting up now for the rest of the year, but definitely a tough way to call it, considering you needed to win every single game from that point forward to make the playoffs, and they just couldn't do it. But we will be coming back to you live from the next Red Sox post game report uh, on Friday after the series versus Tampa Bay. And we will see you all then.
The JRN 564 podcast is presented by Old Dominion Freight Line, helping the world keep promises. Welcome back to the JRN 564 podcast. I am your host, Sam Vetto, here for the esports part of the podcast. And today we have some pretty big topics, but before we get into that, Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance? Of course you would. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance and more, and Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways that you can save. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com or contact your local agent today. Now, talking about our topics here on the Esports Pod, Sentinels has just made a big move in the world of Valorant. Their main star player, Tens, just retired from the sport after years of up and down performance, but over the past recent year and a half, he's been absolutely excellent, including Sentinels winning their second total championship at the international level. But what does this mean for the team going forward, right? We have this kind of unique stance that we find ourselves in with Sentinels, where they have a great core with players like John QT, Zekin, and building the team around them, right? But there is this kind of weird amorphous identity that is kind of present now with this team that hasn't been there previously, you know? And we kind of have to look at what this means for them going forward with the lack of Saucy and Tens on the roster going forward too. They lose their kind of main initiator, who was their main duelist for a long time. They lose their sentinel slash initiator player in Saucy as well. And now they've kind of had these two spots that need to be filled with a market that isn't necessarily optimal. I mean, we saw them go out and sign Narrate from Carmine Core and Bang from 100 Thieves, but I don't know how that will translate to team success, right? They're going to have a period of time where they are going to be learning from each other and figuring out how they want to handle certain situations that they couldn't handle it the way they used to before, right? The team would kind of run through tens. It was tens setting up opportunities for the rest of the team, and then the team would capitalize, right? And Saucy, even for that matter, was a kind of stable force in that team, being a regulatory, consistent level of play that you're going to lose on an everyday basis, right? Saucy may not get 20 kills, but Saucy's going to get his 15, and he's going to set up good util for the rest of the team. So going forward, that will definitely be a topic of interest to watch with this team. We're going to take a quick break here to read another sponsor ad. We all know about the speed of sound, but have you ever thought about the sounds of speeding? If you drive over the speed limit, there are lots of different sounds that you might hear. Driving too fast, and you could hear the sound of your vehicle crashing, the sound of ambulances and first responders desperately trying to free you from the wreckage. You could hear the beeps of a heart monitor. You could hear doctors and nurses in emergency rooms as you're being treated for your injuries. You could hear the sounds of worried family members in a hospital waiting room, hoping to hear that you're okay. You could even hear the sound of people crying at a funeral. Because if you drive over the speed limit, whether by a lot or a little, you can do damage that's beyond repair. You could seriously injure yourself, or worse, you could hurt and even kill someone else. When you speed, you put everyone on the road in danger. One way or another, speeding catches up to you. Paid for by NHTSA. NHTSA. So as we come out of that ad, we can kind of look at the rest of the field here in NA, and I think this is a perfect time to reach our hot ticket take of the podcast. Hot Ticket is brought to you by Vivid Seats, the official ticketing partner of JRN 564. Great deals on the hottest tickets. Experience it live. So when we're looking at this team that's going to have to take over in NA, we have a lot of options, right? We just saw G2 make a giant move. And I think that is our idea for where this league in NA is going to go. The hot ticket is going to G2, who just signed Jogamo, the duelist from Evil Genius, probably the best raised player NA, period. He definitely will go into that team with players like Leaf and them and give them some kind of leadership. As someone who has gone and won an international tournament, he will offer a lot of context and drive and just correct motives and thought processes to have going into an international tournament for a team that, while they haven't really had their opportunity to really show it off, they went and had a great performance at Champs at the end of the year. I think they will be a team to look forward to coming up. And the JRN 564 podcast is brought to you by Allstate. College football fans, are you in good hands? Because with insurance from Allstate, you'll be game day ready every day. Visit allstate.com or call a local agent today to learn more. Allstate, you're in good hands. We will catch you guys next week on the JRN 564 podcast. That is it for this week's esports episode. I am your host, Sam Vetto. I'll be signing off.